And in fact, this is working against Ukraine in the long term. Now, to get a sense of the kind of problems all this is causing, consider this article that's just appeared on the Responsible Statecraft website, and it's by Anatol Lieven, who is discussing, he's setting out his opinions about the war, and he says that the Germans, this is the title of the article, remain adamantly opposed to sending any Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Well, I'm not sure how adamantly opposed they actually are, but then he goes on to say, and this is a point that is indisputably true, that the United States and its allies have never clearly worked out what the purpose of the war now is, what they intend, what their ultimate goals in this war in particular are. And to quote the article, and the problem presented by the NATO and for the US, German and French governments is that they do not actually know what they want in Ukraine. They have pledged to help Ukraine win, but have not. The Ukrainian, Polish and Baltic governments know they want the complete defeat of Russia, the reconquest of all the territory lost by Ukraine since 2014, and preferably the overthrow of the Putin regime and the breakup of the Russian state. For cooler heads in Berlin, Paris and Washington, this is a likely path to a NATO-Russian war and the possibility of mutual nuclear annihilation. Note that Lieven talks about cooler heads, which essentially concedes the fact that there are also hotter heads, in other words, people in Washington at least, who are fully in favour of this agenda of reconquest of all Ukrainian territory lost since 2014, the overthrow of Putin's government and the breakup of Russia. But anyway, let's move on, because this is the part of the article that I found really interesting.
What?
Thus, the Biden administration is now being quoted as saying that it wishes Ukraine to be able to credibly threaten Crimea.
Good.
At the same time, administration officials insist,
Already got full ammo.
to whom one wonders, that this threat is intended to divert Russian troops, bring Russia to the negotiating table, and make it willing to compromise rather than to actually encourage Ukraine to attack Crimea. And then Lieven says this is, to put it mildly, a complicated position and a very difficult and dangerous
just
line
fine.
to negotiate, depending as it would on being able to persuade the Ukrainian army to stop. Actually, there is no such plan. What you can clearly see happening is that some people in Washington are trying to urge Ukraine to go slow. They don't want Ukraine to launch any offensives. They want Ukraine to pull back from Bakhmut. But there are other officials in Washington who are telling Ukraine something completely different. They're saying, go all the way, launch your offensives, aim to retake Crimea, do it by August, which is what General Ben Hodges is apparently saying in all sorts of public fora. And you can see the tension as this clear argument is playing out. And I'm going to suggest that one of the reasons why the Germans are so reluctant to supply their Leopard 2 tanks and to allow others to supply their Leopard 2 tanks as well is because they are, at some level at least, informed about these debates, and they can see all of these interchanges. They are aware of all of these interchanges. between the Americans and the Ukrainians, and they are following this advice. They know that the United States has given up trying to negate Russia's massive artillery advantage. They know that the United States is advising Ukraine not to engage in offensives. They know that the United States is advising Ukraine that it is now in an attrition war, and that if it continues that way, it will lose the war, and that it is also advising Ukraine to pull back from places like Bakhmut, and indeed specifically from Bakhmut. And all of this, of course, must inevitably make the Germans more concerned about supplying their tanks. And they must also be aware that even as this is all going on, there are some American officials who are telling Ukraine the opposite, urging Ukraine to launch offensives. You may take Crimea despite the enormous population involved in such a move. So, I think this is a revealing article in Reuters. I think this gives us a very clear idea of really being thought and it shows how difficult for the United States this whole situation is now become. Now, I will say that I saw a report about this Reuters article. I saw this Reuters article discussed in another forum, and this forum alleged that somewhere in this article there was an admission from this senior US official that the US is also telling Ukraine that this is the last big delivery, the last big supply of Western weapons that Ukraine is going to get from the West and from the United States, and that this makes it all the more important that the Ukrainians use it properly, because if they fritter it away, there won't be anything else to replace it. Now, I have to say, I've read this article from Reuters. I cannot find this comment or alleged comment there. Perhaps it was there in an earlier version.
The Eon program is bigger than us. Can't you see that?
These articles can get edited and changed over the course of their publication history. Perhaps that's what's happened. It would not surprise me, however, if that were the truth. So we see that this whole thing is much more finely balanced than some public commentaries in the West might suggest. Privately, the United States is becoming more concerned and more skeptical about the direction of the war.
Okay.
It's worried that things are
Someone
not
else
going
can worry
well.
about that.
It's realized that it's lost
Wait
conclusively the race with the Russians on artillery, that the Russians will always outgun Ukraine in this battlefield, and that the Ukrainians are engaged, finding themselves in an
not on
attrition
Black
war,
to waste time.
which they are losing. And, well, we will see whether or not the Ukrainians are able to follow this advice. Now, I'm going to say a few things. Firstly, there has been some very strong warnings now from the Russians about deep strikes, about what would happen if the United States did indeed encourage Ukraine to carry out deep strikes into Russian territory. And there's been a particularly strong warning from Vyacheslav Volodin, who is the Speaker of the State Duma, and said that the supplies of offensive weapons to Ukraine will lead to a global disaster if Washington and NATO countries send arms that will be used for attacks on peaceful cities or attempts at occupying our land.